can reduce the likelihood of cognitive decline by 38%. Imagine if you could take a pill that would keep your brain sharp in this way. Everybody be taking it. But again, it's just eating vegetables. Taking turmeric, which is an Indian spice, can reduce the chronic inflammation that can help prevent Alzheimer's as well. Some of my favorite foods can actually increase neurogenesis. Tea and chocolate and blueberries will make your brain grow more brain neurons, So it's not just what you exclude from your diet, but also what you include that makes it beneficial. Whereas what's bad for your heart is bad for your brain. Saturated fats and sugar and nicotine decrease neurogenesis. Believe it or not, cannabinoids found in marijuana increase neurogenesis. I'm just the messenger here. Sex actually increases neurogenesis in just a matter of weeks. Again, the primary determinant of improvement wasn't how old people were or how sick they were. It was simply a function of how much they changed their lifestyle. The more they changed, the more they improved, which is, again, a very powerful message to give people at any age. And so I came up with this idea called the spectrum. And the spectrum is based on this finding. The more you change, the better you get. And the more you change, the better you feel. And the better you feel, the more likely you are to want to keep doing it. If you go on a diet, chances are you're going to go off a diet. Diets are all about what you can't have and what you must do. And then when you go off the diet, people have those toxic emotions, shame and guilt and anger and humiliation, which really are bad for you. And once you call foods good or bad, it's a very small step to saying I'm a bad person because I ate bad food. And, might as well just finish the burger at that point. It gets into this whole shame and guilt and moralistic stuff. And so I said, look, what matters most is your overall way of eating and living. Instead of saying I'm on a diet, which means you're going to get off the diet and have all those toxic feelings, to say, look, I'm going to move in a healthy direction. What matters most is my overall way of eating and living. So if you indulge yourself one day, it doesn't mean you got off the diet or you failed or you cheated or you're bad. Just eat healthier the next. You don't have time to exercise one day, do a little more the next. You get the idea. And so it's a very compassionate approach because you can't fail. There's no diet to get on. There's no diet to get off. And so I categorize foods from the most helpful, what I call group 1, to the least helpful, group 5. And group 1 are the mostly plant-based foods. Group 5 are the usual suspects, red meat and fried foods and lots of sugar and things like that. And groups 2 through 4 in the middle. So I'll say to them, okay, where are you on the food spectrum? Let's start with that. Well, they might say, I'm eating mostly unhealthy group 4 and 5 foods. So instead of us telling them what they should be doing, you, the person, tell me how much you want to change and how quickly and how many things you're willing to change. We'll support that degree of change. And then if that's enough, great. If not, you can do more. So let's say you wanted to get your cholesterol down 50 points and you're eating mostly group 4 and 5. I'd say, well, how much are you willing to change? Well, I'm not ready to go all the way to be a vegan or a plant-based diet, but I'll eat less 4 and 5 and more the healthier groups 1 through 3. Great. How much exercise are you doing? Not much. How much are you willing to do? Well, I'll walk 20 or 30 minutes a day. Great. How much yoga and meditation are you doing? Well, I'm not. How much are you willing to do? Well, I don't know. I'll meditate 10 minutes a day. And I'll spend more time with my friends and family and loved ones. I'll say, great. So we'll track it. And if then after, let's say, a month, they wanted to get their cholesterol down 50 points and it came down 30, you say, look, you're moving in the right direction. Now just go a little bit farther and you'll get the rest of the way. The same is true. So it's a very compassionate and very effective way of changing lifestyle because you can't fail. I thought it'd be worth talking about what I think is an optimal way of eating. And it goes something like this. There really is a convergence of what most thoughtful people think is a healthy way to eat. You want to eat mostly plants. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, in their natural, unrefined forms, are the healthiest way to eat. They're low in the disease-causing substances, and they have literally hundreds of thousands of protective substances, phytochemicals, bioflavonoids, carotenoids, retinols, isoflavones, genistein, lycopene, on and on and on, that have anti-cancer, anti-heart disease, and anti-aging properties. If it comes from a plant, Michael Pollan likes to say, eat it. If it's made in a plant, avoid it. And if you're going to eat meat, try to use it as flavoring rather than as a center of the plate kind of thing. You want to try to also reduce your intake of sugar. And there's been a lot of talk lately about how toxic sugar can be. And it's true, sugar and refined carbs. But as I'll talk about, it's not the whole story. It's just part of the story, but it's an important part of the story. And also you want to try to consume 4 grams a day of fish oil or flaxseed oil. My mentor when I was at Harvard was a man named Alexander Leaf, and he was the chair of medicine and became the first chair of preventive medicine. This was his pioneering work. And particularly if you have a little kid, by giving them fish oil or taking the fish oil yourself when you're growing the baby or putting it in your formula if you're not breastfeeding, which you should, or just taking it yourself, it'll end up in your breast milk. You can raise your baby's IQ from 7 to 10 points just from that alone. It's amazing. You can reduce the incidence of sudden cardiac death by up to 80%. You can reduce the incidence of prostate and breast cancer. And so that's an important thing to do. And if you can have organic is better. It doesn't have the insecticides, which we're learning now are often endocrine disruptors. They can really wreak havoc with your hormones. Now, I'd love to be able to tell you that butter and steak and meat and pork rinds and bacon and sausage are health foods, but they're not. Doesn't mean you should never eat them, but just don't kid yourself. Now, the myth is, Americans have been told to eat less fat. They're fatter than ever, so fat's not the problem. It's all sugar. Well, it turns out I was able to dig out from the U.S. Department of Agriculture database, is that really a true statement? It turns out it's not. That, in fact, Americans are not eating less fat. They're eating more fat than ever. From 1950 on, every decade, there's been a steady increase in the number of not only the amount of fat, the amount of calories, the amount of sugar, and the amount of meat and red meat. So it's not surprising why Americans are fatter than ever. It's because if you eat more calories, if you eat more fat, if you eat more sugar, and you eat more meat, you're going to gain weight. It's as simple as that. And we know that over the last 50 or 60 years, Americans are exercising a lot less as well. The real epidemic isn't just heart disease or diabetes, it's loneliness and depression and isolation. And so the unmet need in our culture is the need for connection and community. So we've kind of learned to just keep ourselves protected by keeping that wall up most of the time. But if you trust somebody, you can really open up. You can make yourself vulnerable. And to the degree you can do that, you can really have a deep connection with them. And to the degree you can do that, it's powerfully healing. And that also makes it sustainable when you have those kinds of connection. If it feels good, it's sustainable. If it's fun and you feel free, it's sustainable. If it's meaningful, it's sustainable. And if you feel a sense of love and support, that makes it sustainable. It's not just how long we live, it's how well we live. That's what makes these things worth doing. As I mentioned before, the quality of our lives goes up so much. Anything that brings us together, even the word healing comes from the root to make whole, and yoga, to yoke, to unite, to bring together. These are very old ideas. Aldous Huxley called this the perennial philosophy that you find in all the spiritual traditions and religions. Once you get past the rituals that people fight and kill each other over, altruism, forgiveness, compassion, and love, why are they so prominent in all these different religions? And the answer is because that's what heals that sense of separation. Suffering can be a powerful doorway and catalyst for transformation, for transforming our lives. Because change is hard. But if you're hurting enough and someone can get you at that moment and say, you don't have to hurt so much. And here's what you can do. I've had people say to me things like, on many occasions, having a heart attack was the best thing that ever happened to me. Or being diagnosed with cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. You go, what are you, nuts? And they'd say, no, that's what got my attention to begin making these changes in my lifestyle.